Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Thursday, October 28th, and some interesting news hitting the market. Some more Voyager news we'll definitely talk about here in a little bit. Also, Bitcoin rebounding after falling a little bit today. Also, want to kind of take another look at Bitcoin dominance again today, CJ, because I think we're seeing an interesting relationship between the alts running and Bitcoin running. Also, Shiba Inu. What a headline it's been over the last 72 hours. Seems like it's cooling off a bit. Worth taking a look at that chart and some more technicals as well. But before we get started, CJ, how you doing this morning, my friend?
Pretty good. Nice VGX price action. That was a pleasant surprise. And just want to congratulate Voyager. I mean, that entire press conference with Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, man, he can sell. He's a really good salesman. Really discussing the benefits of Voyager's interest rates and whatnot. But overall, great day yesterday for Voyager. Also with the announcement this morning of the $75 million injection from Amelia Research and that partnership. So really a lot of growth and a lot of awesome stuff happening for our partners over at Voyager. But as for the collective market, we are getting a nice bounce in Bitcoin here today. We are starting to see funding rates return to a more stable level where we don't have short-term speculation really into the market like the levels that we had previously. So I'm excited to look at that and more. But how are you doing, Monty?
I'm doing well, CJ. Doing well. I'm glad you actually mentioned that right there because the funding rates I think have been a driving force in the market over the last week. We typically see that happen around the end of the month, but looking to that I think is going to be very important to see if we can really make new all-time highs and sustained growth. So I'm excited to hear what you got to say about that. But yeah, I'm doing good. Glad to see Bitcoin is bouncing back, showing some strength today. It seems like people are maybe taking a little bit of profit on some alts and rotating that back into Bitcoin, kind of the opposite of what we were saying just last week. So plenty to talk about today. What do you say we dive right into it?
Let's do it. I'll pull up some charts. All right. So let's take a look at BTC first. Seem to be holding that 58K level pretty nicely thus far. Let's see where the fib levels line up. It's a little bit below, but still in confluence with that. Really, that support level that we're finding is remnants of that lower high. We've talked about that yesterday, and I've kind of gone over those details as well. Also, I think it's noteworthy to just look at these oscillators. Look at how the RSI is actually bouncing from the zero line, which in theory is then support. And a lot of returns to that zero line and then bounces from it have been decent places to think about scaling in historically. Also, when you look at the CCI, a little bit faster of a metric in terms of reaction to price action, but we are also seeing a very similar type of bounce off of that bottom channel there. So theoretically, both of these oscillators are finding some support, which I think is promising, especially when you pair it with a bullish engulfing candle near some support levels. So overall, I think what we're seeing from the trend thus far is very promising for Bitcoin from a bullish perspective. If we are to close tonight in about 9 hours at this similar level, I'm going to look for bullish continuation up to the prior high. And I'm going to get into the reason why I expect that. And one of the reasons is when we look on chain, we can see the SOPR and these reset levels between kind of profit and loss and when traders decide to get out. So each time we have a reset to this one level, in bull markets, it has been a nice place to enter trades. If we look back here after the initial run up to 20K, really nice time to buy the dip right here. Once again, when we put up that second leg, another reset really called the bottom. And so you have many instances where price resets at this one level and then rebounds, even if it only is for the short term. Like, for instance, sorry. Like, for instance, if you look at this arrow, we did have a nice reset on the SOPR at that level. The problem was that people were still buying the dip with leverage right here. And so that ultimately led to a further liquidation down until we tested below and got, once again, another reset on the SOPR. So I'm going to get into this in the next chart, but we're not seeing levels of leverage like what we experienced right here. So I think this is pretty promising. I think it bodes well for the bullish case, and I'm excited to see what happens throughout the rest of the day as a result. But let's get on to the funding rates. So we talked a lot about this yesterday. We talked about how when we have these leverage funding rates and these futures funding rates really get overly positive at the top of an uptrend, that can pose risk for specific liquidations. And the thing that we're seeing now that I think is a little bit more promising is when we zoom into the short term, we can actually see ever since our recent liquidation, these funding rates have somewhat stabilized, and within the last few hours here, we're actually really returning to kind of a reset period, kind of similar to the SOPR, essentially. So I think those two metrics really open up Bitcoin with the potential to have a more authentic rally now that we've been a little bit oversold here in the short term. So interesting stuff. I'm going to wait for the close tonight before I make any decisions, but it's looking not bad for the Bulls thus far.
Yeah, not bad at all. And I just want to quickly follow up on your last point there about Bitcoin futures and the funding rate. Looking at some Glassnode data as well, we can see that, like CJ pointed out, it is coming back down to a reasonable level. And what we typically see, is futures funding is important for positive price action, obviously. But whenever we get these big spikes, like we saw here, we tend to get these sort of liquidations. We saw it here as well. Obviously, this is a massive amount of funding. Lots of it was levered longs, like CJ said. And now that it's coming back to a more sustained level, that implies that, what we're seeing today is likely the result of, spot buying, less leverage in the market, more sustained, organic, positive price action. So definitely bodes well for Bitcoin. Also tells us a lot about, what we might see going forward as a potential bottom if we do get another liquidation event. The fact that 58K, held up relatively well, I think ultimately bodes well, for Bitcoin in general. I think that, you know, we're not out of the woods yet. I think there is still the possibility of coming back down and retesting that same, sub 60K level. But in the interim, we are showing strength today on this bullish engulfing candle, and we're looking set to come up and retest this, next Fibonacci level, and ultimately, our previous all-time high here that we just set last week. Already I'm encouraged by what we're seeing in terms of volume today. Like I said, yesterday, I think we got some nice confirmation that 58K in the interim can hold up as a bottom for Bitcoin. We saw lots of Bitcoin exchange hands here, high amount of volume. And it makes sense that this level held up given what we've seen historically. We've talked about 57.5 and 58K as, some pretty critical levels. And I think if you look at what we saw last night in terms of this rebound with this bullish engulfing candle, and then what we're seeing, this morning in terms of, Bitcoin futures funding rates, obviously this price action isn't the result of, leverage or traders speculating on future price action. It's the result of traders liking price at its current point and buying its spot. And that's what's resulting in this bullish engulfing candle. So I think that's definitely worth noting. It speaks to sort of the authenticity that we're seeing in this, price action today. And I think ultimately, like you said, CJ, it bodes well for the bulls here.
Thank you for that. Would you like to cover ETH very briefly? We can discuss that one because it's actually much closer and actually on the verge of all-time highs as Bitcoin rebounds here.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a great point, CJ. ETH is performing, very well this morning, and relative to Bitcoin, it's actually outperforming Bitcoin, which is definitely worth noting. And like you said, CJ, we are coming up on this highly critical level at about 4,200 that had held, for candle body closes as very strong resistance. Obviously, we wicked above it to set new all-time highs, but ultimately getting above and closing above this level and getting buyers to step in above 4,200 has been a real challenge for ETH over the last couple of weeks here. So today, we're getting a very nice bullish engulfing candle. It's looking strong. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that now that Bitcoin has found support at that level of 58K, it's showing that organic growth that we were just talking about. People are now more willing to speculate on the alts because, it brings back that risk on environment. And I want to quickly just take a look at Bitcoin dominance while we're, talking about ETH and the alts, because I think that, what we're seeing today and what we saw, over the last 24 hours can really give us some interesting insight into Bitcoin dominance, what the relationship of the crypto market looks like, um, and, what we may see going forward. So yesterday we saw a, big improvement in Bitcoin dominance. It bounced from this critical smooth moving average here and rebounded to about 45%. It wicked up even higher into the 46% range. And that happened on a day where Bitcoin was not performing well, right? Bitcoin's selling off. And although Bitcoin's selling off, it's selling off to, less of an extent than what we were seeing in the alts. So therefore, Bitcoin dominance was increasing. Now today, Bitcoin is showing positive price action, but now we're getting a bit of a doji candle here. But really, this Bitcoin dominance initially this morning started to fall to retest this moving average here. This moving average is really coinciding with the critical level of about 44%, which I am marking as a breakout level, or I guess a breakdown level in this case, to be looking to get into the alts. I think that once we break below this level, that will really signify that the market has gone risk on. People are willing to speculate into the alts. And that's when we get those, really parabolic returns that are so famous during the end of market cycles. So, today, I would not be surprised to see Bitcoin dominance fall, even though Bitcoin is performing well. And that has to do with, people starting to speculate more heavily on those higher risk, higher beta assets. And I think one of the first indications of that is what we're seeing today in ETH. Already relatively outperforming Bitcoin, like CJ pointed out, approaching some highly critical levels here, and definitely needs to be watched closely because I think if we do get a breakout above this level, it could start to move, relatively quickly as it does, when we get these breakouts. So interesting stuff from ETH and alts across the board. I think it's setting us up for a rather interesting weekend of price action here, CJ.
Thank you for that, Monty. I'll go into my Doge of the day today then, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So I really like Matic. This is a asset that has been trending quite nicely here ever since breaking above its 20 smooth moving average. There's a lot of interesting um, action in terms of volume. We had that initial volume spike, and then the trend continued. And then just yesterday, we actually had another increase of very large in terms of like average trading volume. If you see that 30-day moving average on my chart below. But overall, I think that Matic is in a posture right now to potentially go parabolic to new all-time highs. Um, there's one strategy that many have written about, but we did go through this in our education center. The strategy where the RSI is wrong, where in a trending market, once something becomes overbought, it's actually sometimes a good instance to enter a trade. So the RSI can be very counterintuitive because we think something's overbought, but in reality, it's just beginning to trend, and so that's it's difficult because sometimes those oscillators will remain overbought in a very long trending market, especially a market like crypto where we experience exponential trends. So check out the RSI is wrong strategy. It's basically do the opposite. George Costanza-esque. So
Yeah, thank you for that pick, CJ. Um, Good stuff there. And yeah, that's definitely an interesting strategy. Lots of interesting stuff happens during these trending markets. I've seen the RSI remain overbought for months at a time. So, um, yeah, good stuff. My doge of the day today. Um, I think there's lots of interesting doges of the day today to take a look at. But one I want to look at in particular is Atom or Cosmos. CJ, I know you talked about it just the other day before we got this, huge spike here. And that's why I kind of like taking a look at it today because we saw this really strong momentum forming just 2 days ago here. But unfortunately, because of what we were seeing with Bitcoin, because of those levered longs being liquidated, it brought the whole market down with it. And like I was talking about when I was speaking about Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin dominance rose yesterday, telling us that the alts fell harder than what we saw with Bitcoin. That's exactly what we saw here with Atom. But I don't think that this candle was necessarily meaningless, even though it was negated by this candle here the very next day. I think it told us that, there was momentum starting to build in Atom. Speculation was starting to build. And I think that today we could potentially see that continuing. And we are, today with this bullish candle starting to form here. I think that, the likelihood of retesting this level and then ultimately, this is a breakout level here at $44 for Atom. I think that this was a sign that we were approaching that breakout level, getting ready to make new all time highs. Unfortunately, because of the timing of the overall market, it just did not work out for Atom. And, the market went very, very risk off. But now, today, based on what we're seeing with Bitcoin, based on what we're seeing with Bitcoin dominance, and what we're seeing with ETH, I think it's worth taking a look at Atom to quickly regain what it lost yesterday and potentially break into new all-time highs. So this is my doge of the day today. But like I said, CJ, I think there are plenty of interesting assets that you can take a look at and possibly trade in and out of this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think we have the option oracle here in our chat. AJ Monty. Bullish candles everywhere, my friend. I see that. But yeah, just want to say thanks to Voyager once again as the sponsor of this show. Don't forget you can get 12% interest on Polkadot and many of other of those proof of stake assets that do 5.5% interest yearly on Bitcoin as well, as long as you hold over that monthly balance. And then make sure if you want to see more education, more insights, and more trade ideas from Monty and I, make sure you check out marketrebellion.com/try crypto. And you can try the first week for just $7. So we definitely encourage you guys to do that. Also, our hedge fund Rebellion Capital Partners is live. And if you'd like to learn more about investing in that fund, you can go to rebellioncapitalcrypto.com and learn a little bit more about our strategies and things that we employ within the crypto market, whether it be through altcoins or derivative strategies or things of that sort. But overall, thank you guys for watching. I hope you're going to have a great day in the world wherever you are. And I'll leave it to Monty here to wrap up.
Not much else to say, CJ. You nailed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, have a great rest of your day, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care.